Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Rob Ledley. I'm the host of this, the moderator for this session, and I'm the Dean of Occupational Programs at Schoolcraft College. And this is the session on how to use job analysis to refine and build better programs. Refine and build better programs. I think we're all interested in doing this, and hopefully you're at the right session. This isn't like an airplane where you have to get off if it's the wrong flight. You can stay here with us and enjoy our talk today. So I'm going to give a brief introduction, and then I'll turn it over to the speakers. So Julie Parks is from Grand Rapids Community College. She's Executive Director of Workforce Training in the Tassel MTech. She has over 20 years experience in workforce development, and her leadership, the GRCC workforce has successfully trained over 19,000 individuals in 2019 and 20, provided training for 439 companies. In 2021, GRCC was awarded 3 major grants for workforce development programs, many focused on low-income, neighborhood, and skilled trades careers. And I'm going to say what these are because I think that it's important to get the breadth of what has been accomplished. The $9.8 million U.S. Department of Labor workforce grant for West Michigan manufacturing focused on manufacturing automation and artificial intelligence. We saw the keynote yesterday discussing that. A $5 million U.S. Department of Labor Strengthening Community College project, which is focused on healthcare pathways, and a $1 million Kellogg Empowerment and Equity Grant. Those are awesome achievements and a lot of work too. And then we have Rachael Jungblut, also from Grand Rapids Community College. Rachel's the Senior Program Manager and Operations Manager in Workforce Training. She brings years of experience to workforce development and is most recognized for her work in turning strategy into practice through process planning, mapping, implementation, measurement, and training for delivery models. She's a technical specialist in job analysis, and it's linked to career coaching, program development, and employer engagement. She brings knowledge in assessment context models for both cognitive and behavioral measurement to connect evidence-based coaching based on job analysis to careers. That last statement is pretty amazing, and I'm hoping that she'll provide some more clarity about that during her presentation. So we're anxious to hear from you. So Rachel and Julie, take it away.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everyone. You don't see me this morning because we can't get the PowerPoint to work correctly and let you see me at the same time. So you're going to see Rachael. It's a much better person to see, and I'm just going to work this PowerPoint and go through it. So we're going to talk about job analysis and Jobsync, which is part of something called the Talent Innovation Network in West Michigan. We call it TalNet for short. And it's a group of innovators from West Michigan Works, the Ottawa Intermediate School District, the Grand Rapids Chamber, Talent 2025, and GRCC. And we're funded by the Doug and Pamela DeVos Foundation and the Kellogg Foundation. And it includes a couple of great consultants. You might have heard of Bill Guest from Metrics Reporting and John Cleveland, who's been affiliated with Grand Rapids and across the country in workforce development for years. And so we really want to make West Michigan, we want to have all the citizens of West Michigan have the opportunity to have the careers that they want to have and to be able to provide for the kind of lives they want to have. We give economic mobility. And it really focuses on all parts of the workforce system and how people make career decisions. And really, can we align what we're doing in education with employers and the workforce system? Because frankly, it's a pretty confusing system. So we have 5 projects that we've been working on together. The first one is Hire Reach, and it's focused on evidence-based hiring, helping employers get the right people in the right seats with the right skills. Career Point, which is focused on career coaching and career advisement and using some technology tools to do that. Skill Sense, which is employability skills, and it builds into curriculum from kindergarten through grade 16, employability skills. So when an employer or someone thinks we can turn a person around in 6 weeks to give them all those life skills, no, we know that that's difficult to do. And this is a whole curriculum that aligns across the age groups and into adult ed to help people be successful on the job. Jobsync, which you're going to learn about today, and Include All, which is our equity and inclusion work, and integrated into so every person has the ability to advance and to be productive. So Jobsync is what we're going to talk about today, and really how we figure out when we talk to those employers and we say, well, what do you need? What do you need? What are those skills you need? And they don't always know what to tell us. So Rachel, you want to take it from here?
Yes, great. Thanks, Julie, and thanks. Welcome, everyone. Before I get into the technical, what really is Jobsync, to kind of try to tie all this together. When we think about identifying competencies from an educator perspective, and when we meet with a group of employers or even a employer as we look at curriculum or maybe a specialized project for them, always that bridge between translating what they describe as what the individuals need to perform the work, and then what that means to deliver effective content in the classroom and in a lab-based setting, so that the individual leaves with the necessary skills to perform the work that the employer requires. And so when we think about how Jobsync can be a tool in our toolkit as educators, but then also when we partner with our Michigan Works partners to look at larger employer projects, it really is a way to consolidate the definition of the activities and tasks and competencies that are needed to do the job and required for job performance. And when we look and analyze a job or jobs together in what's called a job family, we really look at two major competency buckets. We look at foundational competencies around cognitive, character, and behavioral skills. And then we look at occupational competencies, those generalized tasks, the specific things that employers describe that they need to do at work, in something that in the job analysis process gets down to detailed work activities or aggregated detailed work activities. And when you go back to what Rob explained about my background, there are ways to measure both foundational competencies and occupational competencies through assessment. And, part of an integrated system, we are not, assessment is nothing new to us in the education world, but often to employers it is, and understanding how that can then help inform good decisions. So when we take a job analysis and we go back to thinking about how we sync our signals, so to speak, as we try to integrate what employers are telling us, how we try to create, develop, design, and deliver quality educational programs, and then how do we bring that disconnect together between the job description, what's required on the job, and how to make that all happen and have people come out with the right competencies. Next slide, Julie. So when you think about the challenges between, how is Jobsync different? Why does that matter? We already have job analysis methods. When you're working with employers and you really think about job analysis methods that they've had historically, most of those methods don't use a competency framework. They are often proprietary. They are not often validated, and they can be very costly. But they are not always easily able to generalize across a larger group of employers, industries, or regions. So when we decided to go down this road of Jobsync, we really are using something called an Onet confirmatory job analysis process. And why did we go to Onet as a confirmatory process? Well, I hope that all of you are familiar with Onet, but Onet is the largest jobs database. It is updated regularly, has predictive validity, has been confirmed and aggregated across many employers across many regions. And it's open source. It's applicable, and it's easy to get to. It's easy to analyze. And in the typical hiring process, it takes time for your talent acquisition specialists, your HR representatives to gather all the job requirements, There's a discussion about competencies, and then that information is used to pre-screen candidates. What's lacking is a model to test validity of those competencies that your managers, your hiring managers, or your supervisors are relaying to your HR professionals, and how are they actually identifying those competencies consistently across their occupations. So in West Michigan, as we got together, Julie was describing the partnership across the talent innovations, but GRCC is specifically partnered with West Michigan Works and our West Michigan Works talent system on how we serve employers to find the right individuals in that talent supply chain. And through this Jobsync process of doing job analysis, we have aggregated all 1,100 occupations that are in Onet. Those have been grouped into job families and produced 100 different job analysis reports across job families that aggregate 22 foundational competencies with ratings. And I'll go into what all those technical terms mean. But that library is a reliable set of usable reports that are open source. I'll actually show you a little bit later where you can access all those. And also we've worked with West Michigan Works on that Hot 100 job list and how we have brought those in together in aggregated reports and created some great foundational competency guidelines that our employers can use to look for talent, as well as our recruiting partners, whether that be through Michigan Works Talent System as they help employers find people, and or other agencies that are helping individuals find people. We are also using job analysis in our current curriculum design. Julie's going to talk about that in a little bit later in the presentation today, and how we have used that as a very valuable tool to help us create a fantastic new program with a consortia of employers. And through the use of these job analysis reports, it really is also supporting the evidence-based hiring models that are happening through our partners with Higher Reach. If you have an opportunity after this presentation, I would highly recommend that you visit the Talent Higher Reach site to see which employers are engaged in that process. One in particular that has been using this concept in West Michigan for an extended period of time is our Mercy Health partner Trinity Systems here in West Michigan. There are some very specific results that you can get when you start to use a evidence-based hiring practice with job analysis as one part of the foundational model, and then assessment as another foundational piece of the model. But Mercy Health has been practicing an evidence-based hiring model and has seen a 23% reduction in turnover, a 16% reduction in time to fill, and they have increased their diversity twofold. So when you really think about when you begin to follow a standardized process for hiring, it can really have some significant benefits to finding and keeping quality employees. So let me describe to you just the functionality of the job analysis process. I'm not going to take you into all of the minute details, but just a general overview. But job analysis is done based on subject matter experts. It is whether we are looking at one occupation or multiple occupations in a job family. We want the subject matter experts at the table to help us do that confirmatory process. So how do we validate the information that we've extracted and aggregated from Onet, and how do we help our subject matter experts help us understand if what we're looking at is actually being performed in the job. We take the time to prepare that report. There is a technical software that we use that is available to people. We plug in those occupations. It gives us a very specific, detailed report. We take that report and we vet that through the help of our subject matter experts. We walk through all the detailed work activities of the report. We walk through a section about tools and technologies, and then we do an exercise around validating the foundational competencies and understanding the ratings and rankings. How important is it? Is it extremely important or not so important? Because when you have 22 foundational competencies, yes, they're all important, but how important, right? Which ones do you use most frequently? What are the top 5 to 6 or 5 to 10? And then after we go through that process and our subject matter experts have agreed to what we're seeing there as detailed work activities as being, yes, that's performed in the job, that report can get published, and then you can begin to utilize it both at the hiring level as well as in the education world. So when we think about how do we get subject matter experts, those are really brought in by the employers. They know who their top performers are. They know who is who has done the work, who might be supervising the work. And it can be from one employer. You could be doing this with just one as you're trying to work through what their needs are, or it could be that consortium model where you have multiple employers who have a similar job and are bringing people to the table who perform those tasks well. And why? I think there's always a question of why. Well, if we already have Onet and it's this large database and it's already been validated, why do you need to go through this concept of confirmatory analysis? And it's extremely important when you're using an evidence-based model that your employees are connected to the evidence that you're using and that they have validated that evidence. As you know, if you've ever worked with Onet, it's an aggregated database. So sometimes you find things in there that aren't relevant to a specific employer you're working for. So you have to take those things into consideration and in account. It's also important that people who are using the Jobsync model and are using these confirmatory job analysis reports know that they have been through a vetting process. And even if they want to go through it again, it's perfectly okay. But those subject matter experts are really key to helping us understand, yes, we're working with the right set of data. And it also helps to know that we've started at the right point, because oftentimes what one employer describes as a job with a specific job title and another employer describes with the same job title often can be two very different jobs when you start to get down into the detailed work activities. And so it's important to make sure we're aggregating the right data so that we're getting the right results. So that's why those subject matter experts really matter, and it's a really important piece to the confirmatory process. So who benefits from Jobsync? It's really our HR professionals, our educators, and then this concept of career coaching. In education, we have had career advising for a very, very, very long time, but there's also this concept of career development that happens in our K through 12 system, and then hopefully gets put into practice in our post-secondary system. But those of us who are working in the post-secondary system know that some of the things that the student thought they wanted to do in high school, when they arrive at college, they're still not quite sure. And they don't always know what putting those things that they thought maybe they wanted to do into practice means. And so that's really how the role of career coaching has evolved, career navigation. There's all types of different words that we use in the workforce system, but it's really that process of finding and helping the person find the right place that they're meant to be. And when we use an evidence-based model and we combine some evidence-based career coaching with Jobsync, it really is a fantastic formula to make sure that we're setting the individual up for success as they continue their post-secondary learning journey and then going into an employer to apply those competencies at work and being a successful employee as being prepared. And in the education sector, we can really help validate our curriculum and how we arrived at where we are, how we arrived at our competencies, how we arrive at our assessment models within our content delivery, and then how those individuals are able to earn credentials as they leave our programs and go out into the workforce. And then again, I talked a little bit about that huge benefit for employers, that reduced turnover, productivity, and where you can really look at increasing your diversity. It's helpful because this is where an evidence-based model and using job analysis to drive that helps remove some of the noise and bias in the system as you make decisions, because you're focusing only on the things that are critical to the job and not some of the other wish list things that sometimes you hear from your hiring managers. The one other thing about benefits to employers that I forgot to mention is that the confirmatory job analysis process can also help identify some very specific things for behavioral structural interview process, which is important. It can help update those job descriptions and look at tools and technology that are really in demand. All right, so here's a couple nuts and bolts about job analysis that you may be interested in. So first of all, let's focus on foundational competencies. This is a snapshot of the foundational competencies for the job family that's considered upper management. And foundational competencies look at a ranking system. So you'll see that column for importance ranking, where it looks at character, cognitive, and physical abilities in this particular job family. And it's scoring them in a range from 0 to 100, and they're averaged across the occupations within that job family. This is a set of foundational competencies that are reviewed by our SMEs, and they're ranked for importance through that confirmatory process. And many of these are things that you recognize because we deal with them every day in our educational setting. And these foundational competencies can inform a structured interview process with our employers. So when you think about how do you get rid of that noise and bias, it's really through following a consistent process and creating structured interview questions that are around the top 5 competencies that are required for the work. So you can create specific questions when you think about responsibility. How do you describe a situation where you felt responsible, or it was important to you, or maybe it was interrupted or postponed? How did you take that? How did you use decisions in your past positions? Describe a time when you knew that you needed to know that you needed to improve your communication skills. How did you manage that? So that you can draw out those things that are important to the work, because you're using the structured foundational model from your job analysis process. And then the second thing we look at is our occupational competencies. And these are aligned to the specific tasks and functions in the job family. It ranks those detailed work activities and helps us refine and create good job descriptions. And when you think about those 2 major purposes, it's really about job descriptions and helping your HR professionals really understand what they're looking for in a person as they're trying to bring through those top candidates for their hiring managers. So as we go through the latter part of the job analysis process with our SMEs, we look at a list of tools and technologies. Now, slight disclaimer, if you've ever really looked at the tools and technologies tool database in Onet, it is very large, and it still contains some very antiquated forms of technology and tools. But this is really an important final piece of the job analysis process, because this will also help identify things that are not listed from your subject matter experts that are really important to the job. And Julie and I have experienced this firsthand when we weren't using a job analysis process for curriculum development. And we had a program, we created curriculum, we trained individuals, those individuals went to hire, and lo and behold, in the interview, they had to do a small assessment based on some tools that were sitting on the desk and describe how they would use each one of those tools in the job. But some of those tools were never mentioned through all of the meetings that we had with all of the employers. And so there were a few things that we hadn't covered in the curriculum, and that was a detriment to our students and communication. Had we used this job analysis process, it wasn't available at the time, but had we had this process, we really could have cleared that up, because we would have had a complete list, because the subject matter experts would have been able to validate what they really needed people to know. So that don't ever skip the tools and technologies piece. And this last we wanted to just engage you with a group of individuals here that have, when we go through the final foundational competency confirmatory exercise in a job analysis, the subject matter experts, which is really a picture here of that ranking of important, not important, and then really laying that work out. They have a strong discussion around why they feel something's more important to another. We like to just take a snapshot at the end of those subject matter experts, because there's a lot of pride in confirming what's happening in that job analysis.
So what does this mean for education? So we read articles continually about employers can't find people with the skills, educators aren't training people the right way. There's a disconnect, there's some kind of translation that's failing. And so what Jobsync has allowed us to do is really understand what are the skills someone needs to be successful. And we match those skills from Onet and from the report with the people who are actually doing the job and doing the job well. We ask for high performers to come and give an hour and a half of their time with us to really map those competencies. So we look at the job analysis, we look at the curriculum, we look at the program, if it's a program, and we say, all of these competencies, are they covered? Are there things that we can remove from our curriculum? Then we, at the college level, because we don't always hear from employers about national credentials that they want, we use competencies to match to national credentials. Because you know, and you heard Marsha Black-Watson this morning talking about the credentials that validate, and that we want to include those in our program so our individuals have transferable skills. And also, this really helps us to show what are the different career pathways that people have. So if you think back to 2000, when we had all of those engineers who got laid off and lost their jobs in that recession, and they didn't know where to go, if we had had job analysis, we could have very easily seen how their skill sets transferred to other jobs that might be available for them, which is exciting. So we worked on a project that we just completed with Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're having trouble finding insurance agents for their employee benefits and for the companies that work with them, who they sell the Blue Cross healthcare insurance to, which, you know, maybe your college gets Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they work through an organization that helps them do that. And Blue Cross said, hey, what can we do to get people? We've only hired people with bachelor's degrees before. We haven't worked with a community college. We said, hey, would you be willing to try this job analysis? So they brought together 6 different providers that work with them, that hire this employee benefits account manager position. They went through the job analysis. They did the ranking of all the different competencies and the importance of those competencies. And we tied that directly to learning objectives in the program we were working on. You know, so how does the learning objective for listening? What are we going to do? How are we going to assess it? Is there another, is there a credential that ties to it? And we were able to tie to the state tests for licensing in the insurance industry as another method to do that. So you might have seen this week, we had a press release about the first apprenticeship program in Michigan for healthcare insurance agents. This is a position that people start at $42,000 a year. They don't need a bachelor's degree. This certification program is enough to get them hired. And then through this apprenticeship program, they're hoping to diversify their workforce. We're doing this right now in water with wastewater treatment in the freshwater plant. We're doing this as part of the One Workforce grant with automation to try to figure out what are the different levels of automation? What are the different occupations that go with automation? So this process has just made it so much easier to understand what those skill sets are and help the employers explain to us so we truly understand what they're looking for from their high achievers. We understand as educators the basic skills. We can ensure those are in our curriculum. I can guarantee that the individuals who go through this program that the employers have provided subject matter experts to are ready to work. And I'm willing to guarantee that if they've successfully completed this program, that they're ready. And if they're not, I'm going to retrain them at no cost. The other benefit is to individuals to see, what do I need to do if I want to get to the next rung of my career ladder? What do I want to do if I've decided this career isn't the right one for me? Do I have some skills or do I have to start completely over? This is truly a way to do systems alignment from education to work, from K-12 to higher education. That's why this matters. So there's a website for Telnet Jobsync. We'd love to have you go there. 62 occupations have reports that have been done. They're not company by company. We do it by occupation. We're really trying to do this because as a community college, we have to serve the whole community. And yes, if there's one super big employer like a Herman Miller, that's a special thing. But the majority of our employers are from 75 to 250 employees. And so how can we build a program that will service a whole group of employers by occupation? So you can take a look at those reports, see if they help you out. They might be something for you to bring together your subject matter experts from employers in your area. We work very closely with Michigan Works. They actually facilitate all the job analysis sessions. We're welcome to go and listen and watch. They produce these great reports that we're able to use as part of our curriculum and program review process and building new programs. So we would love to share how we do this step by step if somebody is interested in doing that. We just think it's just an easier way and a good way to validate what is needed by our employers and really cut down on the disconnect. So here's how you can reach Rachael and I. I don't know if you have any questions. It might seem technical and overwhelming. Someone at a presentation a couple weeks ago said, how is this different from ACT job profiles? It's very different. It's not the same at all. I don't know, Rachael, if you want to address that if people have questions. But it truly can inform your curriculum and make your job a lot easier and make your work more effective. We're always looking for ways to be smarter in what we do.
Yeah.
What did I forget, Rachael?
I think you covered everything very well, Julie. Thank you. Just one other final point is I feel like job analysis is a great bridge. It really brings together the language that the employer uses, and we can help them translate that into the language that we use in the education world. As Julie showed that slide about how we took the foundational competencies required and how we align that to our learning objectives, and then how we would use assessment or how we would use techniques in the classroom to understand if the student has met those competencies. It's really, job analysis is a great way to bridge that, because you can literally go back to, hey, here's what we're teaching in the classroom, our competencies and our metrics and our activities, and go right back to that job analysis and say, and this is what we're getting at when we do that. And that bridge is really that syncing of your signals, that systematic alignment that I feel like has been missing as a piece of this work that I've been doing for 20 years alongside of Julie. So this is really fantastic, at least the experiences that we've had with it in terms of curriculum development and curriculum models. And even as we look at quality improvement in our current models, how we're applying. So I have the chat up. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to bring them to the group and have Julie or I respond to them. But we really certainly appreciate you spending your morning with us and learning a little bit about Jobsync.
And if you have no questions, we're good. We did send our PowerPoint in, so you should be able to get that somehow. I don't know, Rob, exactly how they would get that, but it's there.
Yeah, I'm sure we will do. Julie, I have a couple questions that you fly in the chat, which is the normal. So you guys work with both credit and non-credit programs, is that correct?
That's correct.
And how does this, is there a difference between the two, or how do you approach it? Do you approach things differently between those two?
I would say no for job analysis. We've just started using job analysis with credit for the One Workforce Grant in manufacturing. We've used it in non-credit, in healthcare, now in water, I guess science, I don't know what to call it, in public works. So it's something new, another tool in the program review process, Rob, on the credit side.
Okay. And then I guess one of the observations I had, I pulled up a couple of reports that from the website. Thanks for that direction. Really detailed reports, very impressive. A lot of work behind this. But I just pulled up one for curiosity in the culinary arts, the food preparation, I guess it is. And I noticed that the foundational competencies and the occupational competencies, there's a lot of crossover. It seems that there's a lot of foundational things seem to creep into the occupational competencies. And I noticed that in one of your previous slides. Maybe you can comment on that.
Well, absolutely. I think you'll see as you begin to understand, remember the occupational competencies are organized by detailed work activities. Okay, so Onet describes them as detailed work activities. And when you really think about how do you take an activity and turn that into, when in the education world, into a competency, of course, it's going to be driven by foundational competencies. So yes, the foundational competencies are drivers to those occupational competencies, and you will see crossover there. And so that's a great observation, and that's why those reports are very helpful to us as we're working with employers to help describe those links, because if most employers are not educators and they don't always understand how to arrive at that competency, because if the foundational skills aren't strong, often the competency cannot be grasped. So sometimes we have to step back, right? And so having that language organized as an employer would review a job is extremely helpful. But great observation, Rob. Yes, that's why those reports are very helpful.
Yeah, and I think the other comment is that you work with, it sounds like, if I heard you right, you work with companies that have 75 or more employees. And so, we work with a lot of companies that are very small. And a lot of times their human resources, or maybe whoever it is that writes these job descriptions, let's just say they don't do a very good job. Mm-hmm. We look at a job description and a lot of our students won't apply because they don't have those skills. But then if you tell them what we're teaching them, they're like, oh yeah, I'll hire them. So how can we help those employers?
Well, so in our consortia groups with West Michigan Works, we have a number of smaller employees. Yes, and that is really important. This really isn't just for the larger employers. Julie was just referencing what we've been working with most recently, but smaller employers can benefit from this too, because it gives them a consistent set of data that they can use within their organization. I don't know how many employers I've met with. I've lost count now. When I meet with HR departments, they don't even know what Onet is. And then I asked them, I said, well, when you were training to be in HR, did you go through, was there any discussion about how to create job descriptions, how to identify competencies, how to identify things that were critical to work? No. So when you really think about the career side of HR, they train for the legal side, the benefits side, the employee relations side, all those, all that minutia, but often they are left in the dark on the career side. And so this process, whether large or small, can really be beneficial. In fact, our smaller employers, usually say, this is amazing. Where has this been? I'm going to be in here all the time now, right? Looking up all of my jobs to figure out if we even have close to some of the right things. So it's been helpful across employer size.
And then I have one final question. Have you taken this to the HR department at Grand Rapids Community College?
As a matter of fact, yes, we have adopted this at GRCC. We have all of our occupations profiled. We've been practicing evidence-based hiring over almost a year now. In fact, our department, my hire 1 year ago was the very first position that went through evidence-based hiring, the hiring model at GRCC. So we were the test model for our HR department to practice, and it really turned out very, very well. So we've been using it since.
And diversity at the college in positions has increased in a year. So evidence-based hiring works.
Right. Great. I don't see any questions coming in from the chat, so I know we're getting close to our time here. So I just really appreciate it. This is very interesting work, definitely impactful in terms of how we're going to build programs and make them better, and just helping employers, I think, and ultimately helping our students get jobs and get the right jobs. So I may use it for myself and this job is going to be. All right. Thank you very much.
Julie, leave us. She's got another 10 o'clock with Dr. Pink, so she's got to chop. Can't be late for the president, right? But
well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And everybody have a great day and try to enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for everyone joining.